Hey everyone, it's John Ashburton here from Police Preparation Australia. I can see we've got a few people already here in the webinar room. We're just a few seconds late tonight. So if you're here, let me know if you can hear me and see me at the bottom of the screen. If you can let me know, the chat message system is set to private, so you'll only see your messages, but I'll see everyone's and you'll see my responses as well. Or I'll just respond in person here. So if you could send me a message, put in the chat area if you can hear me and see me, and I'll know that we're ready to get started. So we've got a few people in the webinar room now. Just confirm if you can hear me and see me. I'll just pipe in the chat area over here. I can see someone said yes. If I can confirm, just before we get started, you can see my message here. And if someone can confirm again, one more person here, you can see me. Wonderful. Excellent. Okay, we've got a few people on board. Absolutely. Thank you very much. I can see one more here from Chloe. Thanks, Chloe. All right. So, and I will also, the reason I set this to private is so that in the messages area, I can see your questions. You don't have to worry about any silly questions. There are no silly questions. And I will answer them as we go through the webinar. So thanks, Bill. I can see there as well. Great. So, the way that tonight's going to work, I will keep it brief. I know it's quite late, 9 p.m. So we're going to go through, I'm going to go through some research and some of my own findings in actually sitting police entrance exams and how you can best prepare and practice for that and conduct yourself during the exams as well to really optimize your results. And then I will go through some of our resources as well in terms of what we can actually offer you. I've got a very special offer tonight as well. I'm going to add in some bonuses that are not included on the standard website that you've likely already seen. And then I'll answer all your questions as well while you decide what you want to do with that. So I know we've got some questions submitted in advance and there are people here live on the webinar. So the way I do it is that you can put your questions in the chat area where you've said, yes, I can hear you, etc. And you can do that anytime throughout the webinar. I'll then answer your questions when we get towards the end. I'll answer all the live questions, and then I'll get to what we've got time for with the questions that were submitted in advance. So this is all about how to blitz the police entrance exams. And before we get started properly, I've got a quick question for you, which I'm going to put in a poll here for you. You can actually vote on this. Interesting study conducted some years ago, but it was about how best to prepare for exams like the entrance exams for the South Australia Police. Not that exact exam, but very similar type of thing. Aptitude test and literacy skills and things like that. And what the researchers wanted to find out was, well, is it better off with one-on-one tutoring, or is it better off doing it at your own pace on a computer, sort of going through it and, almost self-learning because you don't have someone on your shoulder there. And so what I'll do is I'll put up here, you can actually vote on this. You'll see in the chat area now on the side, you can pick whether you think it's personal tutoring or online self-paced training. So this is probably obvious to a lot of you, but you can still put in your votes here. I'll publish the poll and we'll see what you all think. Now, while we're waiting for all the votes to come through for that, quick disclaimer about the webinar and Police Preparation Australia in general. We're not endorsed by South Australia Police. We're not affiliated with the recruiting or anything. We're a private company. What we do is we provide you the best preparation that we can in order to empower you to really not just pass the exams, but blitz the exams to a level that you will actually get into the selection pool. Because if you're not aware, there's often more people who will pass than will actually be selected. So it's not about just passing the exams. You really want to blitz these exams so that you stand out and you can actually be selected. So in line with that, we don't guarantee your selection. That's up to you. Obviously, there are sometimes medical conditions and the like that might preclude someone. But generally, your results in your testing is not us or the recruiting, it's you and your preparation. So really, it's up to you, and I think you'll agree that's fair enough. So let's get cracking on with the rest of the webinar here and have a look at the poll results here. I can see 33% voted for personal tutoring and everybody else for online. So a third of people personal tutoring and 2/3 said the online self-paced training. And it is absolutely what they found, that the self-paced learning was more effective in that particular piece of research. And the researchers' theory about this was that it was a better simulation of the actual testing environment. So that if someone had only practiced with another person in a different environment where there were other people around, when they get into the exam room, you can, and some of you may have experienced this, sort of be overwhelmed almost by the silence of the situation and the lack of feedback, etc., that is in a proper exam. So that was their theory about that. I mean, my caveat of even mentioning this study is that I would say it's best to do both. But if you were only doing one, then to simulate your test environment as best as you can is the way to go. Because, this is not just my theory, but the research supports this, that those same connections that you're making and you're forming in your brain as you learn this stuff, if you're in the same environment when you're in the test environment, or at least similar conditions, i.e. it's quiet, you don't have someone sitting next to you over your shoulder helping you, all these things that are very similar, then you will naturally relink those same connections and you'll work more effectively. So not just be able to answer the questions that you've learned, but apply what you've learned faster and answer more questions, which is what aptitude testing is all about speed and accuracy of response. So this leads to what I call the number one myth about police entrance exams or aptitude exams in general, where people will tell you things like this, what you see on the slide here: you won't be able to study anything specific for this because it's an aptitude test. It's like an IQ test. I'm sure some of you have heard this. I heard this a lot, and I'll explain what happened to me, which is a bit of an embarrassing story I'll get to in a minute. But this is not true. Unfortunately, what I've written on the slide is actually taken from a police recruiting website, but it is not the case. And I'll talk some more research about that shortly, but very quickly, a bit of my story as to how I ended up teaching this is because over 10 years ago, before my police career, I applied for the military. And I call this my 2-year lesson in selection test preparation, because what happened to me was that I did not prepare adequately. I, was in that camp of thinking, well, I've done pretty well with school. I will be okay with it's an aptitude test, so I'll just turn up and do my best, and I'm sure that will be fine. And it was not fine. I did not get selected. But worse was that my letter of feedback, which explained that I was not successful, invited me to reapply for the Defence Force in 24 months. So I had 2 years before I could even put my application in again. So it was a massive delay in my aspirations to join the Defence Force. But I did apply myself, not over the whole 2 years, but certainly when it was getting close to my exams again, several months out even, I started learning everything I could about how to pass the similar tests of what I'd seen and how to perform better all the way through selection. And I knew straight away when I went in and sat that aptitude test again, a couple of things stood out to me. One, I actually finished the test. So the first time through, I didn't even finish. And I was like scrambling back through trying to answer questions I'd missed and just guessing. Second of all, I wasn't guessing so much. So I completed the whole test and I wasn't guessing on the answers. So I got a lot more of them correct as well. And so, that led to successful selection. So this picture here is me graduating about a year and a half after that testing from military college in Canberra. So I don't tell you this story just to impress you that I got into the military. It's more about what happened next, because after about 10 years in the military, I decided a career change to join the police service. And whilst I didn't remember everything I'd learned about aptitude tests, I did remember the lesson I learned about what happened last time when I paid it off and I wasted 2 years. So I had no intent of making the same mistake, but there wasn't a lot of resources that were specific to the state where I was joining. So I needed to pull things from all different places. And so I did so, and I prepared myself. And I was so effective in that preparation and my performance in the testing that I was selected for the very next recruit squad after my testing. So I was literally at the police academy within a couple of months of actually doing my testing, because my performance put me up in the top of the selection pool. So when they grabbed the next, it was 30 recruits for the next squad, I was in that group and I was off. So this is me much, much faster this time on the graduation parade ground, graduating this time from the police academy. So that's a little bit about my background and really why I started Police Preparation Australia, which I'll talk quickly about more towards the end of the webinar. So let's talk now about the South Australia Police Entrance Exam, which is what you guys are all here for, right? So this is it's administered by TAFE SA, if you're not already aware. Covers off 5 broad categories, being numeracy skills, reading and comprehension, writing, spelling, and abstract reasoning. Now, I've got a little asterisk there on the abstract reasoning. because recently there was some movement towards taking that out of the initial testing. So we still provide resources for it in case it's brought back in, etc., because then it's there. But also it does come up in a similar form in the psychological testing later with the pattern recognition, etc. So that's why I've listed it there. So if you go through and you do your test, or whether you've done it already and having to do a reset, then that's why abstract reasoning is there. But definitely the top 4 are definitely there still. And on that point, one of the rules with South Australia is that if you do sit the exam and you do fail it, their rules are you have to wait 12 months to reapply. So it's not the 2 years I had to wait, but it can be a similar delay, because if you think about 12 months before you can put your application in, and then depending on when they take another round of recruits, it could be a while, because 2017, they are, what they call fast tracking applications, where they're putting more resources into processing them, which is great now. But if you don't pass now, and there's this big recruitment drive this year, well, next year, if you're reapplying then, it might not be so good. Like, I know that when I went through my academy, there was only like a few squads that year. The previous year, there were like dozens. So it does fluctuate. So it sounds like this year is a good time to apply and get it right the first time, which is the lesson I learned the hard way. Now, in the context of those 5 areas, I've got 4 principles I want to share with you of how to effectively practice for, for your police entrance exam. The first one is you want to practice in the same environment of the test. This is the research that I talked about earlier. So we know generally what an exam condition is like, and your best preparation is going to be to practice in a very, very similar environment. So, for example, one thing I didn't mention before is I know a lot of people say, oh, well, John, I study better, I learn better, I work better when I've got music going, right? And so, I mean, let me know in the chat area if that's you, if you seem to work better when there's music, whatever the task is. But certainly if that's the case with exam type work or academic work, where you can do more if you've got music going. Couple of people, yeah. So the problem with that is that when you get into the exam environment, you won't have the music. You can't take your iPod and your headphones in, right? So this goes back to what I mentioned before about this overwhelm of silence that can happen for you. So I really encourage you to practice in the same environment as the test, somewhere where it's quiet at least, where you can just focus on that and be on your own and get comfortable being on your own in silence, really, because it is a big deal for some people. Secondly, you want to practice the same type of questions. So what I'm talking about there is, I went through a minute ago the categories of tests that you face, but even within those, like literacy testing, like South Australia is quite specific in the way that they do it, where it's not just about normal verbal reasoning testing, which is word associations, word meanings, like they're there, but they do other things as well in terms of grammar and spelling type tests, which are in there as part of the assessment. So you want to make sure you're practicing those types of questions so that you don't take generic preparation and then end up in the exam going, hey, these are very different to what I'd prepared with. So you're never going to get the exact questions. Like, even if we had that, we wouldn't give it to you because it's cheating, right? The idea is to give you the preparation resources to train your brain, train your mind to answer similar questions and give you the skill set to perform well with those same type of questions. On the same line as that is my third point here, which is learning how to answer similar questions. If you've already sat any other resources, practice exams, I'm sure you felt the frustration that I felt when I was first trying to do this, which was you would finish the practice test and you'd go to the answer page, and the answer page sounds something like this: A, B, A, D, C, etc. Right? It's just telling you what the answer was, and all you find out is whether or not you were wrong or whether you were right. And even if you were right, maybe you guessed, and your actual score in practice doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what you're learning. So without detailed solutions as to how to answer a similar question, I wouldn't say it's useless, but it's almost useless, right? Because you're not actually learning anything. So learning how to answer similar questions is very, very important. And of course, I'm mentioning that we provide that with our resources, very detailed solutions. And I'll answer one question earlier because I know someone said it here, and also it has come up in the the questions before the webinar as well, which was about how tricky are the maths questions. This is exactly where you really need to learn how to answer the questions, because you're never going to see the identical numerical reasoning type questions. So we provide even an additional ebook now, all about mathematical reasoning, numerical reasoning, basic arithmetic, multiplication of like even fractions and decimals and things like that, which they don't form the majority of the questions, some of the more advanced things. But when you understand what we can teach you here, it actually simplifies it, because numerical reasoning in an aptitude test is really about the speed and accuracy. And so it doesn't matter if you know how to work it out in long form on paper without a calculator. That's great. But if you learn a few tricks and techniques, you can change answering a question from like 2 or 3 minutes to 20 seconds in some cases. So learning how to answer similar questions, but also how to answer them rapidly, which is what we're about. And the fourth thing is to get qualified instruction. So, which is what we are, I suppose. So qualified instruction being, you're not learning from someone that has just, the ivory tower thing is like, well, we teach aptitude tests because we know lots about aptitude tests. Learning it in the context of police selection, which is what we do, and all we focus on is preparing you for police entrance exams. So these are the 4 things. Simulate the environment as best as you can, get the same type of questions as best as you can, and learn how to answer those so you can apply your learning to the actual exam and get qualified instruction. Regarding the actual performance on the day, I do have a question on the resources. So I'll put that. That's coming up in about 5 minutes. I'll put that up. I'll show you what our resources are. If you're on the site at the moment, don't invest in the resources there, because what I'm offering you in this webinar will save you a lot of money. So hold on with that question, and I'll get to that in a minute. Last thing I want to bring up, though, before we talk about that, is to really give you a hand, whatever you decide to do, in principles of performance, because I want to give you some real value here on the webinar as well. So the first thing I say is that you've got to pre-frame with positive references. Now, this is not like a positive thinky BS thing, like, just feeling good, etc. There's solid research behind this about the way your mindset and your psychology immediately before you go into exam can dramatically affect your results. It's not just about whether or not you've prepared. It's about your state of mind, or your physical state, really, when you go and sit into that exam room. So, for example of this, I'll give you the reverse, which I'm sure most of you I've experienced. Which is, you're going into an exam. This might have been a uni course, a TAFE course, or something else, or even high school. Excuse me, where you're waiting to go in the exam, and suddenly you think, or you might have been thinking about this all night. What happens if I don't answer what happens if I didn't answer the questions in my study? Like, what if I was studying the wrong questions and I get in there and these aren't what I prepared for? What if I go in there and I just go blank? What if I just have a bit of a freeze up and I have a bit of a panic, or my anxiety starts taking over in the exam? What if I get in there and I make a mistake with the first question? Is that going to bother me? Which I'll talk about in a second. So, when you do that, you actually take away from your own resourcefulness. And then all those connections that you made, that I talked about before, when you were preparing and training your brain, you lose access to them, because you start going into a very negative state of mind and you can't access it as easily and as quickly as you would otherwise. So pre-framing with positive references means putting thoughts into your mind about things like looking around the room and thinking, I am the most prepared person here. I have done so much study for this exam. I am ready to go. Okay. And knowing that, whatever they're going to throw at me, I can handle it. I've prepared for this. I'm very confident with this. This is why I'm here. I've worked for this. I'm here to get an amazing score. Let's go. I've got this, and get real confident about it. When you go in with that sort of mindset, then you give yourself access to all those connections that you made when you went through training. Your brain finds and looks and finds for what you need, and you perform better. So the same 2 people that can have prepared very similar way can perform very differently on the day. And it doesn't matter what you know. What matters is your score on the day. So your performance is key. So I say 80% is your preparation, 20% is your performance. But if you miss that performance tip, then you can really go down the gurgler quick. Secondly is focus on what you can do during the test. So I mentioned one of the negative mindsets that can occur is that you can either get stuck on a section of the test, or you might finish a component, say the literacy area, for example, and think, oh, that really didn't go well. Now, you got choices here. You can dwell on that, which will affect the rest of your test, or you can take a clean slate with every single question and apply yourself, do your best with every single question and get back on the horse, as it were. So even if you make a mistake, you can still do well with the rest of the test. But if you get bogged down by it, then you make more mistakes and they snowball into more mistakes. So focus on what you can do during the test, which is all about what's in front of you. It's not about questions you've already answered. Focus on what's in front of you and what's coming up next. The third point I say is simplify, simplify, simplify. And what I'm talking about here is that aptitude tests are a very specific type of test. Not all the questions, but many of the questions will be multiple choice, for example. So by example of simplify, I talk about this more in our resources, but one quick point I'll give you here is that if you remember, like one example with multiple choice, that you can often discern likely answers from just reading the question and then the answers and knowing, well, obviously a couple of these are wrong. It's like that old TV show. It's called Hot Seat now. It used to be called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Let me know in the chat if you remember Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with Eddie Maguire. Yes. Anyway, possibly a ridiculous show, but one of the things on that show was they had the 4 options that you could employ. You could use like phone a friend, or one of them was 50-50. So you could remove 2 of the 4 answers, and then you only had 2 to guess from. So you're 50-50 on whether you get it right from there. Sometimes you can do this in an aptitude test. You can look at the questions, and even though you don't know the answer, you know which answers are definitely wrong. So it's almost an estimation. And then when you look at what's left, you can make a faster decision on an estimation to answer the question. So this is by simplifying, right? So that's one example of how you can simplify a question down. And number 4 is what I call making the buzzer shot. So this is an analogy I made up from basketball. You know, when you're watching basketball, or you might have been playing basketball, and the time is about to go, the stop clock's almost about to go, and just as it goes, he or she with the ball, wherever they are on the court, just makes a shot, because if they miss, well, they're out of time anyway, and if they get it, well, bonus. Then it's an extra point extra 2 points, 3 points rather normally, that they wouldn't normally have got. So when I talk about this in context of aptitude tests, I mean, you remember when I talked about the military testing I was doing, and I didn't finish the exam the first time. And I didn't have this technique then, but I sort of did it. Didn't help me then. But if you do this, you can give yourself a few extra marks. Where, say, for example, you've got a test where you've got, say, 50 questions in 50 minutes. It's not that exact in the South Australia police exams, but just for ease of explanation, so you got 50 questions, 50 minutes. So you've got 10 minutes to go, and you've still got 10 questions to go, but you've also skipped 5 questions. So you've got 15 questions to go in 10 minutes. So you might think to yourself, well, I'm going to get these last 10 questions done here in 6 or 7 minutes, which will give me 3 or 4 minutes to go back and make a best guess on the questions I skipped. Because in most aptitude tests, you're not penalized for an incorrect answer any more than if you didn't answer the question. So answering all the questions is a good approach to take. So on that point, it is a very good idea. I don't have mine on. I don't have my watch on, but you won't be allowed to have a phone in the exam, and you can't guarantee there's going to be a clock in the room. There probably will be, but I do know that some people have been caught out with this, and they do the old thing where they come and cross numbers off the board, telling you how long they've got left. But now you're depending on the examiner actually remembering to do that and doing it frequently. Whereas, and there's a big difference between having a watch on and actually having someone tell you 5-minute increments, right? So knowing exactly where you are in time really can take a lot of pressure off, take some anxiety off you during the exam. So part of that make the buzzer shot thing is make sure you wear a watch to the actual exam. So I'm going to talk very quickly now about the South Australia Police Exam Mastery course. That's one of the questions I see here in the live chat area. So what I'll do is I'll show you generally what this normally is on the website here. So you can see this popping up on the page now. Just hold on, there it is. So, so normally what we offer here is it's 2 different levels, and I'll explain why in a minute. But our course covers hundreds of practice questions. It covers the reading, comprehension, writing, spelling tests, those time-saving tricks I talked about for numerical reasoning. You can use it anywhere. It does work on your phone, tablet, laptop, whatever. And it's step-by-step training, including we also provide training exercises to simulate the computer skills test that you have to do in South Australia. And then also with the premium level, which is what I'll offer tonight, you also get physical assessment training that helps you prepare for your fit for duty test. So you get all the areas covered from numeracy skills, reading and comprehension, writing, spelling tests, abstract reasoning, the computer skills test itself. And I will say with the computer skills test, it's worth looking at this as well when you, because some people I suspect may just blow this off because it's, well, I'm okay with a computer, but you'll find this out, this will change one day, but it hasn't changed yet. But South Australia Police, a lot of police services, they're still using relatively older technology and processes. Because if you think about any government organization, it's a big deal to upgrade any software or computers. So, while some of the PCs are newer, the actual operating systems might be quite different to what you use, particularly if you're like me and you're on a Mac or an iMac. And then the Fit for Duty, where we take you through, this is a full-blown video preparation course, everything from bag lift training right through to beep test training, grip test drills, and a complete planner tool that you can use to take from where you are to plan out where you need to get to, and a plan to how to get there in the time that you've got left. This course, with all our resources, we do this complete money back guarantee. So you can invest in this and use it all, have a look at it over 60 days. Even if you decide to not go through with your application, I figure you shouldn't have to pay for it in that case. So because if you're not using it, then I don't think you should pay for it. So if you're not 100% satisfied with it for some reason, or you just don't need it anymore, you just send us an email and we refund you. It's very, very simple. And you've got like 2 months to do so. So you can see a few success stories here. A lot of people have had success using our resources now. And we've actually helped tens of thousands of people across Australia now. And so the way this breaks down normally is we offer a basic preparation program, which just covers that initial aptitude test. And then we offer a premium level, which includes the computer skills training and the fit for duty and physical training modules as well. Both options come with additional ebooks on police careers, advanced police testing application, and that new ebook that I mentioned before, Maths Made Easy, which is all about all the numerical reasoning tricks without a calculator. So normally the premium level sells at $299.95 over 3 payments, or we do a discount of $225 if you pay for it up front. However, tonight on the webinar, I'm going to discount that quite a bit, but also going to include an additional training course for you, which I'll bring up just here. Hold on a minute, because one of the things I added, we get a lot of questions for other aspects of police training, and some of them even came through before this webinar, which I won't talk about on this webinar, but it's all about police academy preparation. So with police academy preparation, we released a whole webinar series. This is actually 8 webinars. These are sort of 40 to 60 minute presentations teaching you preparation for the academy, with everything from your mindset before the academy and before each day through to what we call the Smart Study Success System, which you can apply in your actual study for the aptitude tests as well. And then real specific stuff about preparing for each different type of training at the academy. So, how you can best prepare for legal training, tactics training, driver training, and more things like that, operating procedures. And then I added some bonus training and things which we give with the whole course now as well, in terms of recruit relations, which is very important at the academy, how you actually get along with your squad mates, because that will set you up for your subsequent career. And some of the more sensitive topics as well that I didn't want to shy away from, which are very important, including your mental health as a police officer, because you will get training on that, but it's something I wanted to add to as well, because I'm very passionate about this, that police work is very dangerous work, sometimes physically, but the real risks in police work is your mental health, because you have to deal with a lot of crap, and there's not often a lot of support around of people that really understand where you're coming from and what you're facing. So there is a higher tendency in the police service than some other jobs on civilian street, which are less likely to have troubles like getting into depression and all sorts of nasty things there. So we talk about that as well. So this whole course, it was called, or it is called Police Academy Secrets. When it was live, people paid up to $500 to attend it. We now sell the replay course for about $300. But tonight I'm going to add it into the premium level of the Master of the South Australia Police Exam course. And the whole thing, instead of roughly $600 it would normally cost, is just $147. So you can get both tonight for that. The way to do it is, you'll see in the chat area now, I've just put up an offer here, which will expire with the webinar. You can just get this tonight. You can get instant access to the whole thing. Just click the instant access button and you'll go through to the order form. You'll stay here in the webinar as well. It'll add into another window. So if you want to grab that while the webinar is on, but you want to hang around for the questions, absolutely. So you can click that. It's not going to take you out of the webinar room or anything like that. If you have any issues, you can just log back into the webinar room. We will be here still answering questions. So you can see that there. You can go through it and get instant access on that. You can, yeah, if there's any questions, let me know in the chat area, of course. So I've answered that. Right. So few questions that came through already. Yeah, I answered the ones about the maths reasoning here. So let me just scroll through. If you just bear with me a minute, I want to make sure we get some of these live questions. So yeah, tips on passing the abstract test. So as I mentioned with South Australia, they did take it out and then they put it back in. So I don't know whether it's honestly like, you know, we go off the most current information that we have. So I couldn't guarantee to you that you're going to see the abstract reasoning questions in there or not. But even if you didn't, they will come up later on in the psychological testing anyway. So passing the abstract reasoning test is like, this is one area where people are like, oh, this is just an IQ test. Either you've got it or you don't. But this is not true, because you can train your brain to identify certain patterns because there's only so many ways that an abstract reasoning test will test you. It's generally identifying the way that a shape is progressively changing or an existing pattern remains extant throughout a series of shapes. They're very, even though each question looks very, very different, the actual way that your mind needs to manipulate what's in front of you stays relatively constant across many different types of abstract reasoning questions. So even if you're practicing abstract reasoning with something that's a little different to the exact questions you see on the day, you don't need to freak out that when you look at the question and say, oh, these aren't exactly the same as what I did. You know, the one I did was black and white shapes, and these have colors in them or something like that. Then you've still got that preparation at heart. So yeah, they are some of the trickier questions you can face, but when you practice more and more abstract reasoning tests, then you will do better on the day. One thing I didn't say about our preparation course is the way that it works is that you'll actually have access to what's called our skill finder test first. So you sit a practice exam. We go through each different type of question in the aptitude type testing, and you get a score as to which you've done well in and which you did not do so well in. And then you can focus your training on the quizzes in that topic first. If you're rushed for time, you know, you may not get everything done, or you just know where you need to spend your time first. And then you can go through in whatever order you want and then go through to the full sort of mock test after that. Next question. How do you answer questions in a speedier time to ensure maximum questions are answered? Yeah, so that's, again, it's all about practice really, and being familiar and confident with the questions. Like, it sounds silly, but even the fact that you go through tests and get used to quickly isolating an answer and having the confidence to stick with that answer can speed up your results. Because sometimes, you know, some people will go through a test, and I was like this the first time I did my real aptitude test for the military back years ago. You know, I would know the answer, but I would start second guessing myself, because even on a question where I knew the answer, I would for some reason check the other answers to see if they were better than, you know, like I knew what the answer was and I was just wasting time. So yeah, sometimes you need to look at the question's answers to find what you reckon is closest. But if you know the answer, you know the answer, and it's there, then off you go. And that is a good tip on how to speed up. You know, some questions you can just answer straight away. Get confident about not second guessing yourself. Okay, next question. Do you have to be a maths whiz to complete this section? No, you don't. But you don't need. Well, it depends what you say a maths whiz is. Like, the questions are not there in terms to, you know, to identify people who are really, really good at maths. The reason I understand that aptitude tests include numerical reasoning still is that it has been shown in various studies that the correlation between someone's ability with numerical reasoning type stuff, i.e. maths, does generally show how trainable they are in similar areas. So because there is a lot of academic type learning at the academy, a higher score, or at least a basic score in these skills, or a high enough score, indicates that you will be trainable at the academy to learn everything very, very quickly, because they don't have a lot of time to teach you. I always, you know, you look at training institutions like police academies these days, the training courses are the same length as they've been for years, but there's all this extra stuff that keeps getting pushed into the syllabus every year, because there's more corporate governance, there's more, all this extra stuff, all this OH&S things and extra stuff that people have to learn. in any government course, at least, including police training. And so, suddenly instructors are really under the pump to get you competent in a very, very short time. So, and you'll know what I mean when you get through to the academy. So, yeah, getting back to your questions, it helps if you know the tricks, honestly, because it's about getting it done quickly. So that's why we provide that extra ebook, which you get tonight as well. If you invest in the in that package at $147, you get that tonight. Again, you've got it's a money back guarantee. So even if you want, I know it's late, if you want to just invest in it and then have a look at it the next day, you are safe to have a look at it, go through and say, is this right for me? Am I going to use this? Make a decision from there. So you're more than welcome to invest in it there, knowing that you're safe, that you can have a look at it. Again, it's like I say, if you're not using it, then you shouldn't pay for it. But it's also like I make it like this is not a book, it's an online course now because it's better training. But if you were going to go into a physical shop, you could have a look at it. We could pull it up on the computer, go through it, you can decide, right? So because we can't do that, that's why I have that very open guarantee to you that you can do what you need to do. Okay, if I failed the interviews and I got a rejection letter, but it didn't say I couldn't reapply. Okay, sorry, I mumbled that. My rejection letter gave no indication that I cannot reapply, but I don't want to waste a year hoping to reapply only to be rejected again. This is a really great question. And as you heard my story, it was something that I faced as well, that I had to reapply for the military in that sense. If the police will tell you if you're not suitable, like black and white, do not reapply. They will tell you because there'll be some reason for that. So in fact, my opinion on this is that it is actually encouraging if you don't get a letter saying you cannot reapply, because it means that there's something there. You may become suitable. You maybe just didn't perform well enough in some test. I know it's a pain. They tend to give you very, very little feedback. But if you improve in every area that you can possibly improve in, mentally, physically, add some relevant life experience in that gap, where you're going to have that whole year, as you said, you don't want to waste a whole year. To reapply. I can't guarantee you're going to get in, but I will say, look, if they don't want you, they'll tell you that you're not suitable for whatever reason. So, yeah, and it can be worth getting. I have had people say, look, I didn't get any feedback. I say to people, ring up, talk to someone, talk to someone else. Like sometimes you'll actually get some feedback from someone. That can be the case. There are all different people working at recruiting, and sometimes you might just happen to get the right person that can say, hey, it was this or something like that. I don't know, but if it was me, that's what I would do. I would make the extra effort to find out what happened, A, so I don't waste my time if I am not suitable, but B, because then I know what to focus on. Okay, what are the steps? We're getting a little bit off, but I'll just answer this one. The steps and how long it would take to specialize in a specific area of the police. So that's a great question, because I know a lot of people have aspirations for specialist squads immediately. A couple of points for that is that you will, it's a good thing to bring up in an interview if you get the opportunity, because you're showing that you have a long-term interest in this career, that you're actually looking at something specific. You're not just looking for a job, right? However, two things you want to be careful of. One is that you want to still be showing that you're willing to serve on general frontline duties, because you're generally going to have to. With most police officers, you have to spend that time doing that. And you don't want to say, well, I'm only going to be doing that so that I can get to this specialist squad, right? I just want to be on the dog squad, for example, because you don't want police officers that are just turning up for a paycheck, right? I've worked with people like that are just trying to get to a specialist squad and they're not interested in general police work. So if you're indicating that sort of thing in the recruitment level, in the interview stage, it's not going to look well for you. And secondly, for your own benefit as well, because you need to be prepared to do general duties possibly quite a few years before you even have the option to go into specialist fields. Generally, it depends on what that specialist field is as to how long it would be, but you're certainly going to be off probation in most cases, and you're probably looking at a few years, but it depends. It's a really good question to ask at recruiting, but also making clear that you're interested in it, but you do still want to do the frontline policing, probably also because you understand that's going to give you the foundation skills as well. And honestly, I'll talk about this now, but this is one of the most fantastic things about joining the police service is the actual, it is community service. I always say it's a great way to give back and serve the community. Absolutely. So, and one of the other questions I've got here, which is about, is this a fair assessment on, how can they decide on the, like a TAFE assessment, whether or not you're a suitable police officer? So I'll talk about that a bit now, because this is one of the it's something I'm very enthusiastic about addressing, if you like, because I do believe you're correct that an aptitude test at the front as a screening device, I get it why it's there, but I don't agree that it's the best way it's done for some people, because I mentioned before I'd worked with police officers that were basically turning up for a paycheck. Now, these are people that probably did very, very well on a test to get into police training, and then were okay in the interview process to be, yeah, okay, you know, they want to be a police officer. They've got the goods. Let's go, right? But on closer analysis, probably it would have been maybe revealed that, hey, this person wasn't really suitable in the long term, didn't have that intrinsic motivation to make a career of this, the personality type to really be enthusiastic about serving people as a police officer. And as such, it turns into a job for them very, very quickly. Now, and in some cases, they will just quit because it's not fulfilling for them. It doesn't suit who they are, and then they're gone. Right? In my squad, you know, there was 6 people that had left by even within 2 years of finishing training. That's like 20% of the squad. So, and at the same time, like I'd be working with people that, you know, I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, go and do something else. And at the same time, I'd be meeting people outside of work who wanted to be police officers, and they would say to me things like, "Oh, John, how did you pass the exams? Because I wanted to be a police officer, but I couldn't pass the exam." And from what I knew of them, on a social level, I would have rather been serving with them. They would have done well at the academy, I think, but they never got a chance to really show their stuff, really, because they couldn't pass a test. And they're up against people who are up maybe just good at test taking, right? So there's this discrepancy, I think, in this playing field of testing, if you like. So the whole idea of Police Preparation Australia and why I started this company is so that people who are enthusiastic would be amazing police officers, but don't have the skills to pass a test to indicate their trainability, give you the skills to actually get past that testing phase. Because I'm confident the rest of the selection process there, including interviews and things like that, well, they're going to make those the more analysis, if you like, of whether you're suitable, etc. But at least if we can get you through the testing, you can show up for the next stage of assessment. And that's what this Master the South Australia Police Exams course is all about. So, yeah, I'm just about to close it off there. I'll leave it open because we've still got 7 minutes there before we wrap up for tonight. I really do commend you all for coming on the webinar tonight as well, and having this enthusiasm to apply and become police officers, because the career is tough. Getting in is tough. It's a lot of work to prepare, and it's not easy. And a lot of people do like to go for easy these days, right? So you're not settling for easy. You're settling for a challenging career to get into. I mean, even, people think university's hard, right? Okay, but universities, they don't, they go off your score in high school, but there's no selection criteria, right? So the police service is very exclusive because there's a very tight selection criteria along a number of steps just to get in, let alone pass the academy and make it as a police officer. So it's hard to do, and it's one of the tougher careers to get into. So I really commend you on going after it. And I'm a former police officer now, but some of my best mates are those that I made at the academy. You go through a lot of crap together, and also later on, I worked in the CBD for a long time, so you can imagine Friday, Saturday nights when it's just you and the other officers around you, you make pretty tight bonds. So you make amazing friends. It's an amazing way to serve and give back to the community. And I really encourage you to stick with it. It is worth the struggle, and it's worth applying. It's a fantastic career if you're suited for it. So thank you also again for coming on to the webinar tonight. Thanks for your thanks as well in the chat. And I look forward to helping you with your selection into the South Australia Police.